Pat Project family, how's it going? Now, we talk about meat a lot on this podcast, which is why we've partnered with Piedmontese and have for years now, because they have some of the best beef on the planet. All right, Piedmontese beef has cuts that are fattier in terms of their ribeyes, and they have also cuts that are leaner in terms of their flat irons, but you can get cuts for no matter what diet you're on. Andrew, how can they get their hands on it?
Yeah, head over to Piedmontese.com. That's Piedmontese.com. And at checkout, enter promo code POWER for 25% off your entire order. And if your order is $150 or more, you get free 2-day shipping. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
What you have in front of you right now, Mason, is called Mind Bullet. That is kratom. It's not an illegal substance by any means.
But it's going to make you big as fuck.
What we say,
Could you imagine?
if you do choose to drink some of it, do a third. It'll just make you, you won't get high. Because I can see.
I've done kratom before.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you know what it is. All right,
First
cool.
time I did kratom, my friend was like, okay, bro, you're going to take this kratom. And he's like, just trust me. You're going to take this many. And he gave me 20 pills.
Whoa.
And I took all 20 of them. And it was amazing.
And you were
20
blasted
pills.
off to the moon.
I felt like I was on heroin. I was like, oh my God, there's no way this is legal. This feels so good.
Should be illegal to feel that good. I agree.
So I don't take 20 pills, though. Like, probably felt a little too good.
Or do.
Or do.
So you were telling me that you've been doing jiu-jitsu for 11 years, right?
Yeah.
How is it compared to like other types of training that you've done? Have you gotten into fitness? Have you gotten into like lifting and stuff like that over the years as well?
Yeah. When I was 16, 17, I was into weightlifting like every, 16, 17-year-old young boy is. I wanted to be like big and jacked and, thought I was a badass. The more heavy weights I could lift, I was like, you feel like the man.
And did like back then, were you like pre-workout on the way to the gym?
Oh my
like tons of
gosh.
caffeine.
So much pre-workout, like way too much. Explode and
Oh yeah.
all those
Classics.
different pre-workouts, like double doses and just like at the gym about to have a panic attack. And then afterwards, just taking like 4 scoops of protein powder. One time I like took so much protein powder that I threw up.
It's so funny. I wonder if that like contributes to like just like how angry sometimes you are when you're a young guy.
Protein powder?
Well, no, we're just like sipping on these fucking things that just race your heart and race your body, and you're going to the gym and you're all angst up and all hyped up to lift, and then somebody gets in the way of you, whatever the workout was that you were doing, and you're thinking, look at this son of a bitch in my way. Like you're super anxious, like just keep going, right? How does that differ from jiu-jitsu? I'd imagine like doing jiu-jitsu for so long, and also jiu-jitsu is like a skill set. Like you don't just go and get hyped up for it. You could. It's a skill set. So how does that differ like nowadays going to jiu-jitsu versus like when you were trying to get big and jacked?
I don't know if the difference happened because I switched sports or if the difference happened just as I grew older, because even as I first started training jiu-jitsu and MMA, I still was taking like 400 milligrams of caffeine pre-workouts and just going crazy. Like
But you're like 18, right?
I was 18, 19. The first tournament I competed in at white belt, I took like a really strong pre-workout before, and I was just like, I was a menace. It was pretty crazy. But now, now that I've gotten older and I've learned more about performance and my own body, now it's just, some black coffee, some honey before training. That's my pre-workout. And then, I'm good. I'm not taking any of the other stuff anymore.
It's very zen.
What if a fight goes down in the street? Where are you going? What you doing?
I'm running the opposite way. I'm not trying to get sued. I'm not trying to hurt anyone and have their cousins coming after me. I'm going to get out of there. Yeah.
Have you had to defend yourself since you started?
I haven't. I used to get in fights all the time in high school, like some of us, may have.
Maybe partially looking for one?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Just, my ego and probably deep down just being insecure, right? Usually the people that are going out and looking for fights are really insecure and they want to prove that they're tough and that they can fight. So it was a little bit of that. And then it was also, I think as soon as I learned how to defend myself, I think I started to carry myself a little bit differently in a way that people didn't want to also fight me,
What do you mean by that, by the way?
Just when you know how to fight, you're just confident. Someone can say something to you and someone can even maybe be a little bit disrespectful to you and it doesn't really get you that riled up. You're just like, oh, that's fine. Like I know I could kill you with my hands.
Well,
I know I don't have to say anything.
Yeah.
That's fine. You can say whatever you want. I'm chilling.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing because it's conflict at its highest level that you deal with every day. Like there's a fight, right? You hear people talking about like fighting disease and fighting this and fighting that, or games like football, games like basketball, games like soccer are these kind of like individual quote unquote fights that are happening all throughout the game in different positions, but they're not actual fights. You guys are solving problems during a confrontation. So if someone says something to you, it probably just rolls off your back a little easier since you're in constant conflict with yourself and with the opponent, because you're like, I wonder if I do this, I wonder if I do that. And at a certain point, I guess it comes second nature as well. But it's an interesting thing to put yourself into that scenario every day where you're in conflict with a potential 250-pound guy that's like sitting on your chest.
Yeah, it's a very high pressure problem solving situation, and I do think that has also helped me with other areas of life. Like, I can remember there would be sometimes, you get so flustered when you're trying to kind of like figure something out, especially if it's crunch time, and the answer might be right in front of you, but you're so kind of flustered that you can't even see it. And now just the fact that I've had to deal with so many different guys, trying to, choke me in real time. We're fighting against each other and I have to figure out these problems. It's really helped me outside of martial arts in my day-to-day life. If I'm late somewhere, sitting in traffic, I'm not getting all like flustered. You can just take a breath and be calm and just try to figure out how to solve this, whatever issue it is in front of you. You can just figure out the path to solve it without really freaking out.
Mm-hmm. I have a question for you, man, because you also instruct too at this point, right?
Yeah.
You instruct over at Cow Terra in San Jose. Do you get to work with kids quite a bit? Because from what you were saying, how after jiu-jitsu, you're able to become a little bit more calm and confident, and words wouldn't make you take action against an individual anymore. That is something that, honestly, I wish I started as a kid, right? So I'm curious, like, what do you see? What do you see from kids doing jiu-jitsu? Do you see like a transition with them? I mean, there's some that are probably pretty wild, and we'll get to that, but what do you see with that?
Yeah, I've personally seen it change kids' lives completely, like complete 180. There was a couple kids. I used to run the kids program in Fresno at my old gym.
Okay.
You would see a kid come in on the first day. They would kind of like walk in like this, and they would be kind of like timid, They wouldn't be very assertive. They wouldn't really speak with confidence. They wouldn't stand with confidence. And you get them training. After 6 months or a year, they get a gray belt. They're choking kids out. They're taking kids down. They're competing at tournaments. They're taking pictures with their gold medals. And then you hear from the parents that they're like the alpha of their friend group now. Like they're the leader of their friend group now. They're walking around with their chest out, and the other kids all think they're cool. And it's just a confidence that you get from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can be great for kids for sure.
Yeah. I do find it really interesting, though, that confidence you get from it also makes you averse to violence. Because for some reason, people do think that, people assume it out of fighters. But when they think of someone doing jiu-jitsu, they're like, oh, that's violent. Or they think it's going to make somebody more violent. But the more I know just more and more jiu-jitsu guys, you just see that most of those people stay away from actual violence. Maybe it's because you can get it out of your system on the mats. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it. You get all of your anger out and you get all of your anxiety out and everything that's been pissing you off at work or in your relationship. You go to the gym and you and your friends try to kill each other. Yeah. And then you're like, like you can breathe, you got it out. There's that. And then there's also the fact that you're confident in yourself and you know that you can fight and you know that you can defend yourself and you don't have to prove it to anybody else. So there's also that aspect that, people that go out, you see the guy at the bar that's screaming, he's looking for fights. That's the most insecure guy in the building because he thinks he has something to prove.
Do you sometimes feel so tired from training that you wonder, like, what could I actually do? Because I'm fucking wrecked right now.
I've thought of that so many times where I'll be in a training camp and I'll just be feeling like just really drained. And I'm like shaking because my muscles are so fatigued and I'm driving and someone cuts me off in traffic and I'm like, man, that guy might be able to beat my ass right now. I'm so tired. I don't even want to try to fight that guy.
You're
right
like
now.
11 pounds lighter because your training was at, the hottest time of the day or some shit like that, right?
Yeah. And then after training too, you want to go lay in bed and, have dinner at home and just relax. You don't want to go out to the club and be like for 6 hours sweating. It's like, no way, I'm chilling. I'm not going to go out and get drunk and try to fight someone. No way.
Yeah. having started jiu-jitsu, I guess in this generation late, because you started at 18, right? Did you do any martial arts before jiu-jitsu?
No.
Okay. This is interesting because you have quite a few accolades, quite a few world championships. Do you, now that you're competing at literally the highest level, do you notice a difference between yourself and some kid who started jiu-jitsu at 6? Because you've probably been able to roll with some of those people. Do you think that you've learned enough within your current 11 years that it doesn't matter if someone started since they were super young, like you can continue to develop and pace them?
Yeah, there's a couple different things there. One point that I do think about, because of course everyone always says, man, I wish I would have started earlier, right? And then me starting at 18, for most people that are competing in a professional sport, if you start the sport at 18, you're starting late, right? So most people would say that I started late. But one aspect, I know so many of my friends that started wrestling at a young age, 4 or 5 years old.
Yeah. And
now they're 25. They've been wrestling for 20 years. And then I know a lot of guys that have went into MMA afterwards. And so many guys are just burnt out. They've been grinding their whole life. And it's like, now I got to go to this practice. Now I got to eat this.
That makes a lot of sense too. Because like if you're doing something from when you're really young, who knows if you even really wanted to do it that much anyway. You're kind of like maybe on autopilot. Maybe it's partially for a parent or something. But when you do something at 18, that's pretty clearly your decision and or maybe a small influence from some friends. And then obviously sticking it out for as long as you have. It's where your interest is. It's where your true interest is. Whereas maybe when somebody started when they were young, they just kind of keep doing it in perpetuity because they've been doing it forever.
Yeah, they didn't get a chance to find their passion. Their parents, usually it was their parents' passion, and then they grew up doing it. I know some wrestlers that were state champs in high school, really, really high value prospects that didn't even end up wrestling in college, because by the time they were 18, they already were burnt out. Because in order to compete in a sport like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, MMA, you have to be so disciplined. There are the outliers that are freaks that can eat all the wrong things and go and party on the weekends and still win. I know guys like that too.
Yeah.
There are guys like that, but 98% of the successful guys in those sports, it's a big sacrifice. You really do have to live a very, very disciplined life. You're not going to be eating the foods that you want to eat. You're not going to be able to go on the trips with your friends. You're not going to be able to go on the snowboarding trips, the trips to Disneyland with your family. You're going to have to be living this regimented, disciplined lifestyle, pretty much year round.
Are those pretty big concerns to like stay away from stuff that maybe is a little bit foreign, like friends go on like a jet ski or they go water skiing or cliff diving or something? You're kind of like, that's not a great idea for me right now.
Maybe not cliff diving, but I would say I'm okay with like, I did go snowboarding like one time, a year or two ago. When I wasn't in a training camp for a competition. I'm not too worried about things like that, like getting a freak accident, if that's like the question. But it's more so just being in the environments. For me personally, like I perform at my best when I am in a routine and when I'm eating the same things, doing the same practices. That's how I feel like I can really peak myself and get the best performance out of myself.
Did it take a long time to come to that conclusion, especially with the eating?
Man, ever since I first started, the first couple of years, I really dove deep into nutrition. I've always been, pretty big, and I was maybe around 200 pounds when I was doing MMA, and I would cut down to 170. Ooh. So I was just kind of right in between. Like I felt like I was too small for 185, but I was just a little too big for 170. So I just like would grit it out and just make the cut to 170. And so I really just did a lot of research on nutrition and supplementation and weight cutting and dieting and performance, because I always have believed that is, that's almost like a sport in its own, mastering the food for performance.
And as you've continued to obviously train and develop, what does that kind of look like now? Because I don't know if you said it on air, but you mentioned like coffee and honey is your pre-workout, right? Or your what you do before you roll. So what does your kind of routine for food look like during a training day?
Yeah, one of my friends put me on to Carnivore MD about it's been almost a year now, and I've been following a lot of his principles. Not super strict. I added a couple things in, like sweet potatoes, for example. A couple things that I think work well for me.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I've been feeling really good following a lot of his principles. So that's kind of what I've been doing lately.
What have you noticed? Like as far as, I guess, the way you feel when you train versus what maybe you were doing before?
Yeah, just throughout the day. That my energy levels feel better. Not as many highs and lows.
Okay.
I feel a little more even throughout the day, and recovery too. I feel like my recovery has improved. Definitely, I feel like my sleep's improved. My skin has improved.
Yeah.
It's helped with a lot of things.
Most of your eating happened like just after training, like you don't really maybe eat as much during the day or in the middle of the day.
So I usually eat like a pound of steak and like a couple eggs like right before training.
Wow.
Right before training.
Like an hour before.
I love it. That
And
sounds
everyone
great.
thinks I'm crazy, but to me, like steak is the thing that digests the best for me. Everyone always like says like, "Oh, how do you digest that right before training?" I could eat steak and then go run sprints like 30 minutes later.
Shit.
It's
I
like
wish
the
I was
one
like
thing
that.
for me. It's carbs that are harder for me to digest. And if I'm going to eat carbs, it has to be a little bit further out from training.
This is a cool thing that you're saying right here, though, because there are some people, including myself, I can't eat like a lump of protein like steak or eggs right before training because it just won't feel good. But I think what you're saying is really awesome because everyone tries to take certain things and say it's an absolute. Like, oh, you can't, you should eat carbs right before you train. Or no, you shouldn't eat that before you train. There are some people that just digest certain things better than others and they feel great with it. So just roll with that anecdote and continue on. And if you want to try that, there's no reason you shouldn't try it just because your favorite coach says you shouldn't eat steak before you train.
Absolutely.
I also wonder like how long does it take for food to even participate in the activity that you're doing? Like the only thing I could think of that would have a fairly immediate impact is if your food was salted. So now you just have a nice delivery system of your electrolytes, but the rest of the stuff is going to take a while to like turn into energy. And so, and also like a lot of times, depending on how long something lasts, like it's pretty common for a runner before they go and run several miles, they might have like carbohydrates and fat. Like they might just eat like maybe a little bit of honey and peanut butter on like an English muffin or something like that. It's pretty common. But again, I don't know how long it takes for your food to like, especially when you're doing an activity, it probably takes even longer. So I think probably more importantly is how you feel, which is really smart and really intuitive. It also probably blunts you from being like crazy hungry when you're done training, perhaps. But again, I think it's a nice delivery system for at least some nutrients before you're training.
Yeah, I think the salt is a good point because I put a lot of salt on my steak. And so maybe that might be one of the things that I'm feeling the benefit from is getting all that salt right before training. And then I do the honey too right before training. So I am getting the carbohydrates in the form of honey. It's they call it a simple
Nsima
carb, right?
He's writing some stuff down over there.
I'm going to write a lot of stuff down.
It's like honey and coffee.
Dude, I'm curious, when did you realize that you were someone who could be at a world level for jiu-jitsu? Because there's a lot of guys who compete and there's a lot of people who like, they're decent, but then there's different competitors who are like, oh, that's a world level or a world level competitor. Like that's a world beater. When did you realize that for yourself?
I've just, for whatever reason, I don't know what it is. I've just naturally, grappling is just the sport for me. There's something about it. When I played rugby my last year in high school, that's how I first started to kind of like get into sports and get in shape. And me and some of the other guys on the rugby team, we would do like grappling matches sometimes after practice because we would watch the UFC. So we would be like, we're going to like wrestle until someone taps. And I would always win. But none of us ever trained. Yeah. And I would do like arm bars and guillotines and rear naked choke because I just would like always watch the UFC. So that's just how my brain works. Like, I might not be the best at like studying technique or drilling or stuff like that. Some guys are
great. You'd watch UFC and then like you'd just like clear out the pizza and the coffee table and shit, and you guys would start to go at it.
Or we would do it at parties. Like we would be. we would be. I could find.
Did it get pretty crazy sometimes? Like,
dude, there's
guys
a video.
throwing punches and shit.
No punches. But there's a video one time.
Imagine it get out of control, right? Imagine it get like heated.
They had rules, Mark. They weren't just
we had rules.
Barbarians. Yeah.
There's a video of me. We were like at a party. We were all drinking, and then I ended up like wrestling against this dude that actually like wrestled in high school, and he like threw me. He like laterally threw me into like a table, and then I like got up, and then he like threw me again, and then I got up, And then I ended up rear naked choking him, and everyone's like, ah, it was crazy. And then we went again. He wanted to go again. He was so mad because he was like throwing me around, and then I tapped him. And then when he shot in, I guillotined him, and I pulled close guard. And then all of a sudden I like felt him go limp, and I let go, and he's just like snoring. It's on video. Yeah. It's when I was like, I think 17, before I ever trained.
Yeah.
I wasn't like training jiu-jitsu and going to parties and choking people out. So like, let's just put that on the record. I swear I wasn't. I was playing rugby, and we would wrestle each other. And one time I did like put someone out. It was crazy.
Well, that's how you knew you're going to be a world champion.
That's how I knew.
Beating
Exactly.
up people at parties.
Yep.
Who was that? The black fighter who was on Rogan, who was just like, yeah, I mean, I watched Bruce Lee stuff.
And his name's not coming.
Yeah,
to me.
no, I just watched the
I'll scroll
episode.
through.
Me too. What's his name?
yeah,
It just
he's
reminds
Joaquin.
me of
Joaquin.
there you go.
Buckley.
Yes, Joaquin Buckley.
Got that
reminds-
most famous kick of all time, they say.
Yeah, the most viral.
Yeah, he's unbelievable.
The most viral moment in fighting history. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you kind of been like that on with physical stuff though? Like, I know you said you watched UFC stuff and you could replicate it, but when you played rugby or when you did other physical things, have you just been someone who could mimic stuff pretty well?
So when I first got into rugby, I was down bad. I was not an athlete at all. I was having problems in high school. I was like rebelling. I was going through like one of those phases, right? I had, dropped out of high school my sophomore year, and then re-enrolled again, dropped out again my junior year, re-enrolled again. And then I was like in home studies.
What was going on?
I just wasn't in the right environment. I didn't have the right people around me. I didn't have any goals. And that's one of the reasons why I think jiu-jitsu is really good for kids, because it gives you goals, and it gives you something to work towards. Yeah. I didn't have any line of sight into my future. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I was just getting into like partying. Man, I used to smoke cigarettes. I was like such a bad kid. Yeah, I was the complete opposite of an athlete. So my little brother, he was a year younger than me, and he had started playing rugby a year earlier than me. So then it was his second year was starting to begin. And I had this thing in my mind that I wanted to be a UFC fighter, right? So my thought was that I'm going to go play rugby with my brother for 1 year, and then it's going to like get me into shape, and then I'm going to go fight in the UFC. Yeah. Like the next month. I thought I was going to go right to the UFC, right? So anyways, I went out to the practice with him, and I was like, when we would do conditioning, there was one guy on the team that was like probably over 250 pounds. There was like a couple big boys on there. I was dead last in everything. Yeah. And I wasn't that big. I was chunky, but I wasn't that big. Yeah. And it just was such an eye-opening experience for me, because I hadn't been exposed to sports in so long. I played when I was younger, but when I was in high school, I just like was on the complete decline. Yeah. So it was just such an eye-opening experience for me. Right away, like after that practice, I like quit smoking cigarettes. I like quit drinking, quit like messing around, got more, it helped with everything. I ended up graduating high school. Like I had to do twice as many credits as normal in 1 year in order to graduate on time. So it was, I got it done, and I graduated on time. I did like, I think 110 credits my senior year. You have to do 220 throughout your 4 years of high school. So coming into
That's insane.
So coming into my senior year, I had half. I had 110, and I needed another 110.
How did you do that?
So
that's a lot of study.
I know, and I started playing rugby at the same time. So I just was like on my grind, and I think that year
It's
really,
all that pre-workout.
I was taking a lot of pre-workout. Really. I think that year is really what kind of like set the stage of like discipline for the next 10, 12 years of my life that I've been so far, because I was like so far behind that I had to get so disciplined, and I think that really carried over.
Are you pretty meticulous with scheduling, or do you just kind of have your priorities?
I'm kind of all over the place. I'm not really.
You don't have to be
organized.
super strict. You don't have to whip out like a calendar and have it all set up. You kind of know what you want to do on each day, type thing.
Yeah. Well, like for my training routines, it's usually the same every week. It'll change up a little bit depending on maybe one practice that I'm going to go to is canceled that week, so I'll go do something else. But for the most part, I have my whole training schedule planned out. But with other stuff like travel stuff, it's just all in my notes, like all over the place. It's not very.
Do you get into any tech? Like, do you use any apps, or do you track anything, or people that work with you, do they, check your resting heart rate, or like use heart rate monitor, or like you do anything like that, or not really?
Yeah. When I was in the training camp for ADCC this last time and the time before, I used just like the Whoop strap. I used that. And then
Cool question. What band did you use for that thing? Because that, like, does it have a chest strap or something?
There's a bicep one that has some padding on it, and that one worked really well for me with jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Okay. I need to get that.
Yeah. Man, I'll give you one because, I'll give you one because I ordered like 6 of them and then I stopped wearing it and I have like all these bicep bands that are still in the plastic. I'll give you one, bro.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got you. I got you, man. I'll
Do
share
you
the
feel
love.
that having some of those matrix, did it help you, do you think? Or like between you and your coaches, you could monitor your training in a way? Because I'm just real curious about this topic because I know there's some people that are way into it and they seem to get a lot out of it. I know that for coaches, it's a way for them to check in with the intensity of their athlete. They kind of want to make sure that their athlete just isn't, going and completely crushing themselves every time they work out.
Yeah, this is funny. The main reason I got it really is because my coach, Kyle Terra, he's a bit of a madman, and he will really he'll really push us. Like there's some days where like me and Yuri would just be like dead on the mat. Yuri Simois, he's one of my teammates. He just won the absolute ADCC.
Oh,
we did the training camp together, and there was some days where we were like almost in tears, like, please, Kyle, no more. And Kyle's like, one more round, guys. Come on, one more round. You guys can do it.
He sounds like that.
Yeah.
That's what he sounds like.
He's like nice enough.
He's like this. He's like a smaller Brazilian dude, and he's just like he has the craziest work ethic of all time, and he just like really, really pushes us past our limits. Like there's been days I came to the gym and didn't think I could even get a workout in, and then I ended up like he just pushes me to get it done. So he just has an insane work ethic. But yeah, so that's the reason I actually got the whoop strap is because I wanted to like have some data to be like, bro, look, like I'm overtrained. Like you got to let me like go a little easier today. But he doesn't care anyways. That thing's wrong. It's wrong. You're fine.
Oh, that's great.
So yeah, I haven't been wearing it. The only downside to it, I guess, it would be like there would be some days I would maybe wake up feeling good, ready to go, and then you look at it and then it's like not recovered, like 50%, and I'm like, oh no, I didn't sleep good, and then you kind of get in your own head too. So.
Yeah. Quick question about like Kyle, man. Like, what are some of the main things you learned from him, and when? Because it seems that not every jiu-jitsu coach pushes every athlete the same. So, did he realize you had certain goals, and then he was like, okay, I'm going to push this guy? Because I don't assume he pushes everybody at the school to that level.
Yeah,
unless I'm wrong.
No, you really have to. You do have to take it as a compliment. There are times when I'm like, man, I wish he would like get off my back. But then at the same time, it's like, I need that. I'm glad that I have that because no matter how hard you work, there's always going to be that day when you're just not feeling it, and you might just go in and half-ass the workout. But if you have your coach, or even with lifting, if you have a training partner there with you, a lot of the time you're going to get a lot more out of that workout than if you're at an empty gym by yourself and there's no one there to hold you accountable. Like, I have a good work ethic, but
you just bench press and leave. You don't do any of your resistance exercises.
Exactly. You're just going to bench and curl and get out of there.
Yep.
So I do think it is important to have someone holding you accountable. And the first year or two that I was there training under Kyle, I've been training with him for 4 years now.
Oh, you found some.
The first year or two that I was there, there was a little bit of resistance. We used to kind of like butt heads a little bit. And then about
that's probably actually pretty healthy too.
Yeah. Then about 2 years ago, I finally something opened up in my mind, and I finally stopped just resisting and just started listening to him, and now I understand it. And now, I've been doing this training camp. He's actually in Brazil right now, running a jiu-jitsu camp.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm pushing myself now the same way that he would push me, just because he's really instilled that like work ethic into me.
What's he up your ass about?
It's just training. Like he, like when he got his black belt in like 3.5 years, he was like the fastest ever white to black belt recorded.
Wow.
And he would just like train for like 8 hours a day. He would put mats in his house and he would invite like different people over at different hours of the day. So like your one training session you would do a day, that would be one of his like 8 sessions. I hear these crazy stories about him that he literally would just invite people over all day and he would just always be training. So it's just like always like imagine you're on a weightlifting program where you lift twice a day for an hour and a half each session. And then he comes in and he's like, man, you're so lazy. You're not doing enough. You should be doing at least 4 times. And you're like, fuck, really? So that's, he's just always like more.
Does he have a lot of tricks, or does he just kind of like,
if you just like watch the way he moves, he doesn't move like a normal person.
I mean, tricks in terms of like making you train more. Like, does he kind of like, point out maybe that somebody else in the gym that already won a championship's training hard, and
Yeah,
does he do like bullshit like that?
Yeah,
Or is he
against
like,
each
man,
other. No,
he's
he
like,
does,
You need
he
to
does.
stay here for 3 hours longer.
No, he does, or he'll like at the start of like I have a good friend Benji there, and he'll be like, guys, just so you guys know, like Benji, he's gonna tap Mason today 3 times, and I'm like,
Oh,
I
my
know he's just like instigating, but it does get me kind of like riled up, and then me and Benji will start going at it like a little bit harder, you know.
Yeah, Louis Simmons, the famous powerlifting coach, he was famous for that. He would go around and like, he would say, "Oh, Mark, that's cool that you did 5 sets, but Andrew was in here earlier today. He did like 8 sets." He's like, and his numbers are going up, so you might want to. And you're like, he walks away. You're like, fuck.
Yeah,
Like, dude, I'm fucking shot. First of all,
Well, so Mason,
like look at this, like
Yeah.
he just like he does like the craziest stuff. He's just amazing at jiu-jitsu.
he also perpetually looks 22.
Yeah,
or
that's
actually
the, no,
18.
that's the worst part is that as he's like breaking your arm, you're like, oh my gosh, he looks like an 18-year-old kid.
Well, because I didn't know what he looked like, so I was like, do I have the right?
Yeah, you have
account
the
up?
right guy.
Wow, dude, that's
How
great.
old is he now?
I don't want to say his age. He'll get mad at me.
I have it on BJJ Heroes. I won't say it though.
I'm just gonna say 28.
But dude, how many world champions has he won? Because like he's one of the best competitors of all time. Yeah.
Yeah, he's won 10 world titles in no gi, and he's won 2 in the gi.
Jesus.
wow.
And one of the years he got voted as like the most technical athlete of the year. That's what he's known for, is just being really technical. And he wasn't born with like the most athletic gifts. He's not the strongest. He's not the most explosive. So he just had to be like technically the best.
What do you think early in your life set the tone for everything that you do now? You mentioned that you just started kind of straighten your shit out. Was there a particular moment? Was it rugby and like the cascade of disciplines that surround? Like if you're going to play rugby, I'd imagine like it's a lot more fun if you can kick some ass in rugby. So you need to be in shape for it. So maybe you had to run, maybe you had to lift, and maybe it caused all these other disciplines. Or was there like maybe a mentor figure in there, or a relative, someone that kind of you looked up to, or something like that?
Yeah, it was rugby. And then, the coaches, the rugby coaches were definitely strong male role models that whipped us all into gear and were on our ass.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important for any young kids.
Dude.
Was there something that you liked about getting your ass kicked in rugby? Because I find it so interesting with like MMA and jiu-jitsu, like people, when they go, they get killed and they're like, this is great. I can't wait to come back tomorrow.
You know what it was with rugby was like, it was, 20, 25 guys on the team. And then it's like, once you start going and then you start making friends with everyone, you can't quit, because then you're a pussy. And then everyone knows you're going to see those guys again, and they're going to know you're the guy that quit because you're a pussy. So that peer pressure of being on like the team, in the team atmosphere, I couldn't quit. There's days I didn't want to go. And that's what I would think about. I was like, man, everyone's going to know if I quit.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to know.
Yeah.
100%.
Dude, have you ever had time, like, has there been any long time in recent memory that you've had away from physical activity, like you were forced to, an injury or something like that? Has there been anything? Or since you started, have you just been super consistent?
Yeah, I've had injuries. The longest time that I was away from training was maybe 5 months with a knee injury.
How are you mentally?
I was okay. I definitely was missing training, but at that time I was teaching a lot at the gym. I was like teaching full time at the gym as a purple belt. Yeah, and that definitely helped me. I was still around my friends every day. I was still getting out of the house. I wasn't like sitting at home on my phone. So I was okay.
Yeah, I asked you that because one thing that I think is so beneficial is starting something like a rugby or a soccer or something physical and men and women. But I've personally, since I'm a guy and I mainly have guy friends, I've seen it have such an impact on habits later in life in just being consistent with shit, having strong physical habits that you can lean back on when you're in stress. That you said you used to smoke, and I don't know if you drink much anymore, but it doesn't seem that when you get stressed or if something happens to you, the first thing you're going to do is go towards smoking or go towards a substance,
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, whenever something's bad is going on through my life, I can remember through the years, like whether it's having a problem with one of your friends, like a falling out or like something with business or, a breakup. The thing I would always go to is jiu-jitsu. So no matter what happens in my life, I'm always going to have that. That's kind of like my outlet. That's my drug, my drug of choice for sure.
You have a match coming up, right?
Yes, sir.
That's just like 2 weeks away or so.
Yeah. That's about 10 days. 10,
Who's
11 days.
who's this great opponent that we have to deal with?
Yes. So the first round, it's an 8-man tournament, and my first match is going to be a young up and comer.
Yeah.
Named Pat Shigoli. Yeah.
Now, this is interesting because I heard about this dude a few weeks ago, and then somebody showed me a clip while I was in the gym, and I just cringed because this young guy who's talented, right? And he seems like a viciously good competitor, but he just likes to break people. And this is the type of stuff that makes people scared of jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? So I mean, what are your thoughts on him as a competitor?
Yeah, so I do think that he's really young. He has a lot of time to definitely make a name in the sport. I don't know. It's a fine line in competing because the problem is if you don't go to like break the person's limb, like if you try to apply it slowly in that second and a half or 2 seconds that you're applying the submission, that's when the person can escape.
Yes.
Right. But I do think that there is a way to crank on the submission and finish it while still maybe giving the person time to tap.
Is that how you go about things when you compete?
I would say, yeah. I definitely am going to go hard for the submission. I'm going to fully extend the submission at a fast rate of speed. But there's going to be a split second where you're going to have time to tap before I'm going to go to actually break the limb.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in the rules, right? Or that
I would say he is well in his rights to attack submissions like that. And there are other adult competitors that also attack submissions like that.
Yes.
Me personally, I would not. I would prefer if I could choose between submitting a guy and him tapping, or submitting a guy and him being injured and having to get surgery or whatever. I would choose to submit him without the injury. Yeah. I think if you could give Pat those two options, he would prefer to injure the guy. I think that he likes that because then he can post about it and say, look, I tore this guy's ligaments, because he's a 16-year-old kid. He is beating, grown men. There's something to say for that. And, there is some hype behind him for that reason. But I personally wouldn't want another grown man who's going to go home to his wife and kids and has to go to work the next day to have to get surgery because I tore his ACL. Now, if I'm going to apply the submission and I'm going fast and he has that time to tap, that split second, and he doesn't tap, I'm also going to go to break the limb as well, but I would prefer if the guy would tap so that he wouldn't have to, injure himself like that.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen the clips and I've seen a lot of comments. The rough thing is he is 16 years old. You're talking a little off air, but when you're 16, you don't necessarily think ahead. I mean, what is it? The prefrontal cortex that's not fully developed. Like you don't think long term. And
I think it's got another 10 years.
I was just going to say that.
You don't
Something
think,
like that.
Yeah, and it's rough for you to think long term about other people. But I'm curious about your thoughts on this too. What do you think most other high level competitors? Because with certain tournaments like the 8-man tournament we have coming up, there's money on the line, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that changes things in the minds of competitors when there's like good money on the line? Like, I'm gonna break this guy. If he doesn't get out in time, I'm gonna break him. What do you think?
For sure, because like in this tournament in 2 weeks, there's $25,000 on the line, and guys will be actually willing to get injured in order to win that money. So that's the flip side, is that there are guys that, for instance, there was a famous match, Craig Jones versus Vinny Magalhaes. Craig Jones had him in a deep heel hook, and he had him in it for a long time, and Vinny just refused to tap. And Craig actually like broke his leg, like snapped one of his bones. Oh. So that's the flip side, is like, okay, now Pat goes and applies a submission to someone, and there's a lot of money on the line, and that guy refuses to tap, and then escapes, and now Pat loses out on the chance to win that money as well. So there's two sides to the story. At our level, we know that if you're in a submission, you have to tap because guys are going to go to break it.
Yeah. And I mean, anyone who's listening, because I mean, and my boy Andrew here, he just got into jiu-jitsu, and there's a bunch of people in the audience that have been getting into jiu-jitsu recently. The thing is when you're training the people, what we're talking about right now doesn't usually happen in training. Like, people in most schools are usually pretty cool where they're not going to crank a submission. There won't be just a split second. Usually there's going to be more time, especially when you're newer. People are going to give you that time to tap. But I guess at the highest level, this is the type of stuff you have to deal with.
So we started to apply a rule at our gym, just because people were, it's a lot of high. Oh yeah.
Fuck.
And then, he doesn't tap it. Then he ends up attacking, I think, the same foot and getting him in it again.
Jesus.
But yeah, when you're in that training environment with, a bunch of alphas walking around, high testosterone, big egos, guys don't want to tap to each other in the gym either. Right.
Yeah.
Then, we were starting to have problems too, where we were like kind of injuring each other in the gym, just in training. So we started to apply this rule, and we use it for most joint locks. You get the arm or the leg fully extended. You hold the position. If I can hold your arm straight for 3 seconds, that's a tap. I don't have to make you tap. If I can hold it there, I'm just going to let it go. And that also is going to help you because there is that split second where you can defend, right? So if we're training and I armbar you and I hip in as hard as I can and you tap, I'm not getting good at the late controlling the finish because I'm not training those last 3 seconds where I have to hold the armbar and continually extend to break it. And you're not training the last second defense.
Yeah.
So there's a big opportunity there to add another layer to your technique, because if you're in a competition, your arm gets extended, your arm might pop, but you have some time before it actually breaks where you can still escape.
Yeah.
So if there's a lot on the line, you need to know how to train those last second positions.
Dude, that's actually an amazing rule. I was listening to some of the Hodger Gracie on Lex Friedman's podcast this morning. Fucking amazing episode. But he was talking about like Hodger's like focus was specific training for a long time. Like he did a lot of specific training from escaping mount, side control, all that, so he can get good at escaping. But he also did specific training at the end ranges of arm bars and ranges of chokes when somebody has his back, what's that little split second that I can take to try to escape here? And he trained those specific ranges. People didn't usually get there on him, but he'd be able to escape that if people got there.
Yeah, that last minute defense.
That's sick.
It seems like that makes a lot of sense from an outsider looking in. It looks like that's where the match is kind of won and lost, because I see they'll scramble and they almost get something and then they almost get something, but that finish part is probably the most difficult to kind of cinch in sometimes.
Yeah.
I did want to ask you guys about that, like specific training stuff, because like there's times where we'll do like scenario things, but it's like, man, I don't even know if I'm ever going to be in this scenario. So my question is, like, even watching like your Instagram, like I love checking out like the somewhat tutorials that you put on there. They're a lot of fun to watch, but I'll be stuck in side control and I'll be like, oh, Mason did this one thing where he slid under. Like, nope, that's not going to work for me. So my question is, like, in regards to specifics, like scenario training versus like just rolling, do you think there's a time and a place for both? Or as a newbie, should I just be focused on like just literally getting mat time and doing rolls?
How long have you been training for?
Officially a month. Yeah.
I think you should be doing only specific training.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. I think you should do like 90% specific training.
Why?
Because, okay, so you learn the move of the day. It's a sweep from close guard, right? And then you guys do live rounds. And then you're just going to do this because you don't know any jiu-jitsu. So why not go and do the whole training in close guard and try to perfect that one sweep in that one position? Well, that's what you worked on today.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes
a lot less
sense.
variables to deal with too, like guys getting hurt and being super sore and stuff. I imagine you guys are talking about like just training a little bit more from the ground and from certain positions.
It would be like if you were working with a lifting coach and the lifting coach gave you a 45-minute seminar on how to perfect your bench. Right. Or let's say you're coaching me. That's more likely, right? You're coaching me on bench. We just studied for 45 minutes all these details about how to bench. And then we go and work out and then we run on the treadmill. Why would we not bench that day, right? So if you're going to learn the technique for that position, you should work on that position as well. So you can put it into application.
And you still think, even though, we'll say in close guard, even though like maybe I might not find myself in that position that often early on, you still think that it's still good to focus on just that one scenario?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that's usually the counter that I have to like some of the like the move of the day, which is like an arm drag or something. I'm like, I'm not even gonna, I can't even get there yet. So like this is cool and all to learn, because someday I might be able to put it together. But you're right. As soon as it's like, all right, now we're going to go into the rolls and practice what we learned. It's like, well, fuck, I'm just going to try to go for my weak ass sweep that I usually try to muscle anyways. So that does make sense. But my counter was just that I might not find myself in that position anytime soon anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's like, if you're playing chess, you first, before you start moving the pieces around, you have to learn what each piece does. Right. So that's the first thing. Learn what all the pieces do, how you can move all the pieces, and then go and play the full game.
What you're saying makes sense because it sounds to me like that's the safest, probably most effective way to get a lot of mat time, considering like the athlete and them getting hurt and sore and everything. Because if you kind of just start to roll,
you're going to get injured. You don't know any moves.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? You're going to do just bad jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
You know?
Power Project family, how's it going? Now, we talk about sleep all the time on the podcast because it's one of the biggest things that helps you with your health and fitness, your recovery, your muscle gain, your fat loss, everything. That's why we've partnered with 8 Sleep for such a long time now, because the technology behind the mattress allows you to track your heart rate, the amount of times it takes you to fall asleep, your tosses and turns, your heart rate variability. It changes its temperature through the night based off how you sleep, but not only yourself, but maybe your partner on the other side of the bed. It is an amazing mattress. Andrew, how can they learn more?
Yes, head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject. That's 8 spelled out, EIGHT, sleep.com/powerproject. Along with more information, you guys will actually save $150 off of your entire order automatically. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
When you start off, like, because again, I think this is a really good thing. When you were starting out, what are some things that you think that people should try to be focusing on in their first few years of jiu-jitsu? Because you see a lot of people, like I remember when I was a white belt, things just didn't make sense. You just keep going and going and going. So what advice do you typically give white belts that you teach?
Just hold on and just survive for like 6 months. For me, I was like miserable. I didn't know anything that was going on. I felt so stupid and lost. And then I remember something happened where it was right around 6 months. And I remember after training, I like got and sat in my car and I was just like, okay, like I get it. Like I'm starting to get it. Like I just understand what's going on now. Like you don't know what's going on for 6 months. So you just have to keep showing up for 6 months and then you'll start to get it. And then you'll start seeing, like, you start to kind of see the game that's being played.
Do you do any specific in the gym training? Do you think that has like a correlation back to jiu-jitsu, or do you mainly just like go in and like lift?
Yeah, so I've been working with Jason Khalipa for about a year now.
Oh, nice.
I connected with him, and I'm so blessed to have the opportunity to work out with him. You know, he's a great dude.
He's amazing. Yeah.
And man, he literally has me come to his house and we work out in his garage. So it's like I couldn't ask for a better, strength and conditioning protocol.
Yeah, those workouts are tough.
Yeah, so I work with him 1 to 2 times a week, and then he'll usually like write me something to do on my own for the other session. And yeah, I've noticed that it helps a lot, definitely. The biggest thing really is injury prevention. Injury prevention. Yeah, I haven't had really any serious injuries. And if I do, like let's say like I tweak my knee, I'm out for 2 to 4 weeks instead of 2 to 4 months. Yeah. I'm not, like if I tear something, it's not fully tearing because I have the muscle to support it now.
That's one thing I've noticed too, real quick when it comes to like lift, because I remember earlier on there would be times where I would not lift as much, and in those times where I wouldn't be lifting as much, I just have little things that would start happening, like my shoulder would start feeling a little bit weaker, my fucking knee would start going kind of odd, right? And then I'd start lifting again, and my body would feel resilient again. So I think like if you don't have to lift like a bodybuilder or anything, but if you can get some lifting in as a jiu-jitsu athlete, your body will just be more resilient to the pressures of the sport.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are you doing Olympic lifts and things like that, or not too much of that?
Yeah,
because I know he likes that stuff.
We do like risk versus reward, right? So like if I was to go work out with him tomorrow, we would be doing a lot less of like something new to me. But when we're in the off season, yeah, he teaches me a lot of the new lifts. We've done a lot of hang cleans, power cleans, clean and jerks. We haven't really done any like overhead squats, but we do like squat, deadlift, bench, some cleans. That's like the foundation of what we do.
It's amazing that you got access to him. He's like one of the best coaches I've ever been around. He's incredible.
No, amazing. And I'm just lucky, and it's just one of the perks of the hard work that I've put in the last 10 years to get myself to this position where now I'm a high level black belt. You meet a guy like Jason, Jason's a high level CrossFit athlete, and he has a passion for jiu-jitsu. So that's what connected us. And, anytime he comes into the gym and trains with us as well. And, I try to help him back as much as I can, and yeah, it's just one of the perks that I've gotten from jiu-jitsu, meeting other people that also love jiu-jitsu. And then because I'm in jiu-jitsu and he loves jiu-jitsu, he wants to go and like help me with my career and help me with my strength and conditioning program. So it's amazing. Yeah, I'm super thankful.
Yeah, he's a beast.
When did you win your first world championship?
I won the Nogi Worlds at Purple Belt, maybe in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And just came out of nowhere. I was training at like an MMA gym, which is unheard of. Most guys that win like the world championships in jiu-jitsu are from established jiu-jitsu gyms.
Yeah.
So I actually won my division and the absolute.
So you were not Kaya at the time.
Mm-mm. I was competing out of a gym called Dethrone MMA. It was an MMA gym.
Okay.
And I was the only competitor from my gym that was competing. Normally you have a whole team that competes together and trains together. And, you know, I was a former MMA fighter, hadn't done that many jiu-jitsu tournaments. It was like maybe my 5th tournament ever. Mm-hmm. And then at Purple Belt, you know, you are competing against guys that have competed like 40, 50 times in jiu-jitsu by then. Yeah. So yeah, I went and got double gold, and that is the first thing that kind of like put me onto the scene.
Yeah. And were you training much gi at the time? Like
yeah. I just I always loved the gi. You know what it is? I love the idea of one day being a black belt. I love that. When I was a white belt, you know, there was a guy that came into the gym that was a black belt, and I just was like in awe. And I was like, I wanted to, at that time, I wanted to fight in the UFC. I wanted to pursue MMA as my career, but I always had this thing in the back of my head that's like, I'm going to get a black belt in gi jiu-jitsu, and that's only going to complement my MMA career, right? So that was kind of like a little side quest.
Was it a big goal for you to win worlds, or was it like you just like went to worlds and you're like, let me see how I can do?
There was a certain point where, yeah, because at that time I had switched my career path to jiu-jitsu. But my goal wasn't to be a competitor in jiu-jitsu. I went from wanting to be a competitor in MMA to just training jiu-jitsu in order to get my black belt, because I thought that I would have a good career path to fall back on. In MMA, once you're done fighting, if you go and fight in the UFC and you fight 5 to 10 times, and then you stop and you retire, what do you fall back on? There's not much. You can open a gym, but it's really hard to run an MMA gym. It's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah.
And with that being said, also, you know, kids and moms don't want to get punched in the face. You know, they want to train jiu-jitsu. So I thought there was way more to fall back on in business if I was to get my black belt in jiu-jitsu. So, you know, I was having some problems with concussions in MMA. I decided to step away from the sport. And I really wanted to go towards that goal of getting my black belt in jiu-jitsu. On the way to getting my black belt and being able to, like, you know, open a gym and start a business, I was just jumping into some of these tournaments just for fun.
Yeah.
You know, just to go and compete and get kind of like that same rush that I was getting from fighting MMA. And then I just ended up, you know, winning. And then it's like, oh, you just got double gold at Nogi Worlds. Like, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't really, it wasn't like a big goal of mine. I wasn't waking up every day like, I'm going to win worlds. Like, I'm going to win worlds. I wasn't watching the worlds. I didn't know who any of the black belts were.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know who any of the competitors were. I wasn't really in the sport. It was just like a little side thing that I was doing.
Yeah.
And then it turned into my whole life. It's like crazy how things happen.
Yeah. I'm curious about this. Do you ever get in your head when you're rolling with, because like you are at that level too, but when you're rolling with competitors who also have like names and accolades, do you ever get in your head about that, or it's just another day just because of your environment?
A little bit. But with that being said, it really can hinder your training if you think too much about that. I'll just give one example. Last week, we had a really, really intense competition class. You've been to the competition class. It's brutal. Yeah. And, you know, at that time I was 2.5 weeks out from a really important competition. So I really, you know, got some work in that day. I really pushed hard. Normally what I would do on a Monday after a really high intensity training like that is, you know, I would go back to our gym and I would do the class at night, and I would train, you know, I would do the technique, and then I would train for 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. And it would be with, you know, a little bit lower level people. It would be just light training just to keep on working, you know, get a little extra work in. But on that Monday, instead of going back to our gym, I had an opportunity to go and train with a couple like really high level guys. One of the guys is a big heavyweight dude that's competed at ADCC before, you know, a couple years ago. And the other one is another high level black belt. And, you know, if I was too in my head about, oh, I'm this person, I'm this top black belt and da 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 da. I might have been a little hesitant to go do another competition style training with high level guys after I had just put myself through that first really intense training, because I was wiped out. I wasn't going to show up at 100% in 3 hours to the next training. I was at 70%. So that was, even those moments, it's a little bit of an internal battle where I have to suck it up and put my ego to the side and say, yeah, like there's a chance that I'm going to get beat, and that's okay. I have to be okay with that. There's a chance I'm going to go to this other gym and all the students are going to be watching and they're going to see me lose to someone else. And then they're going to all go talk about it and they're going to text each other in the group chat.
I just had Mason Fowler.
Exactly. It's a chance that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. Because if not, you're going to limit your own training. And I did. I lost one of the rounds, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And after that, I texted those guys that I trained with and I was like, hey, let's train more. Instead of like shying away from that, I'm trying to throw myself deeper into that. You have to seek out, the toughest guys you can. You have to put yourself in those situations. If you're showing up to training every day at 100%, then you're doing something wrong.
Do you think the sport needs to be cleaned up? The no-gi jiu-jitsu? Like, because it seems like there's a lot of PED usage.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would prefer if there was across the board testing for everyone. I would prefer that. It would just make the sport, it would just make things a lot easier, because at this point, you don't know. You don't know if someone's taking something. You don't know if you should be taking something,
Yeah, if it's not against the rules.
It's not against the rule. If there's no testing, then it's like, it's not cheating, right? There has to be a test to cheat.
On the no-gi side, because I know, what is that? Fight to Win. I think they've said they never plan on actually doing testing, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to that side of things, because IBJJF does test, but they don't test rigorously. Do you think where do you see kind of things going as far as that's concerned? Do you think it's just going to continue to get more rampant, get worse, or do you see anything changing there?
Yeah, from what I've heard, there's no plans of any extra testing being added to any of the competitions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
How does that make you feel as a competitor? Because do you kind of feel a pressure that you need to start using stuff to try to catch up to people, or what's it putting in your head?
There's a yes and no.
Okay.
Because, some of the top guys, you would assume that they're using drugs, right? Mm-hmm. But there's also a lot of really high level guys that are outspoken on being clean athletes.
Yeah.
So, kind of, but it's not the same as say, like trying to go win like Mr. Olympia, right? It's like physically impossible to get to a certain level in bodybuilding without taking certain things, right? But I don't think it's physically impossible to get to a certain level of jiu-jitsu without taking things. Mm-hmm. I think you can become the best in the world natural.
Yeah.
I think it's possible.
Well, the big things that really changes is just like how much you can, like not even how much you could train, but just how hard you can train on a consistent basis. It's not like it's going to change your skill acquisition or the technique that you have, but it's just like, can you go a little bit harder every single day of training? Maybe. And are you going to be super strong or stronger than more people? Maybe. But like Kyle, I think his whole thing is technique overall. If you have good technique, could probably beat anybody. Yeah.
So then there's even, you could also say that if you're taking a slew of performance enhancing drugs and you're building your strength to a certain level, and you're doing that from the time you started jiu-jitsu. Let's say we get him on steroids, right? He's in his first month. We get him on steroids right now. We get him on all the PEDs, everything.
Yeah.
His recovery's great. His cardio's great. He's the strongest guy in the gym. He's gonna not overlap, but he's gonna skip ahead, and he's gonna skip 30 of the steps that he would have learned if he didn't have that strength.
Yeah.
So there's a give and take. You're gonna be able to skip over some of the technical aspects of jiu-jitsu, but then once you've skipped over it, it's going to be hard to go back and retrace your steps and figure it out.
Mm-hmm. With so many people getting into jiu-jitsu, is it profitable? You make some good money? Like you mentioned that you're a coach and people I know teach and all these different things. How do you kind of like monetize it?
Yeah. So the biggest thing is teaching. You basically, the formula has been that you compete to show that you're good, and then people want to learn from you, right? But with that being said, now there's been a lot more opportunities to make money as a competitor instead of just being a teacher. You know, there's the path of selling online instructionals, even though that is, you know, teaching, right? You're selling an instructional. But then also you're getting paid now to show up and compete. Whereas, you know, 5-10 years ago, that was almost unheard of. Now, today, there's probably a paid professional competition going on, you know, almost every weekend. So there's opportunities to make money as a competitor now. But for most guys, for like, you know, 95% of the guys, you're going to make money selling instructionals and teaching seminars.
Yeah.
Or teaching at an academy.
Being both high level in the gi and no gi, right? What do you think are some of the biggest differences between both? Because you now see guys who just go straight into no gi and they're like, fuck the gi, I'm just going to learn no gi jiu-jitsu. Do you think it's necessary to learn the gi if you want to be a really good no gi competitor? I'd ask like 2 questions within that, but
no, that's a good question, and it's a tough question. But I would say if you look at like the last ADCC, most of the guys that won compete in the gi sometimes, or at one point started in the gi. So like, you know, even Gordon Ryan, he's a black belt in the gi. I'm pretty sure he started when he first started, he was training in the gi a lot. Yeah. So I do think that it's beneficial to train in the gi at a certain point. But with that being said, I do think that you can also get to a high level if you're only training no gi. If someone came to me and said, I want to win ADCC one day, and they were like, you know, 14, 15 years old, I would have them training and competing in gi and no gi. I would, me personally.
Gotcha. And that aside, do you think that being high level in the gi has given you a certain type, like maybe a different understanding as you train no gi jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. It just slows the game down.
Yeah.
And when you're training no gi, after like the first 30 minutes, it gets real slippery. You can slip your way out of things. You know, you can scramble your way out of things. For instance, like escaping side control. Like if you had me down in side control, if someone was to tell me, I'm going to give you $1,000 if you can escape in a minute, would you rather be in the gi or no gi?
Gi.
I would choose no gi.
You would choose no gi?
To escape?
You choose no gi?
Against you? I'll choose no gi.
Oh, I thought you meant if I had to keep you in side control,
you choose
I would choose
exactly, because it's more control. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? So I'm saying if someone was to pay me to escape, I would choose no gi.
Oh yeah.
It's just easier to get. I could just fight my way out a little bit easier.
Yeah.
You know, when you add the grips in, it just adds a whole nother layer of technique and just like friction. So yeah, I do think that it helps.
Okay. Do you lift before or after usually? Before a jiu-jitsu training session or after?
If I could have my choice, I would do my lift at night. So I would go and train, and then I would have like a break, like at least like, you know, 4 hours, and then I would go and do my strength conditioning. But with that being said, the only time I can usually get with Jason is in the morning. So I've had to kind of suck it up and switch it and do my lift first and then the jiu-jitsu training.
So no steak and eggs before you lift?
No, I do.
There you go.
I do steak and eggs, and then I literally eat as soon as I'm done eating.
I like this lifestyle.
As soon as
sounds good.
I ate steak and eggs on the way here. I have the plate still in the car.
Wow.
That's awesome.
I did.
What, do you got a Tesla, or are you just trying to drive?
I do have a Tesla. Yeah.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh, sick. I do that all the time too.
Yeah, so I was just eating and
That's funny. How much do you give to the lifting sessions? What I mean is, because like right now I'm still trying to find the balance of like, okay, lifting and rolling. So when I'm lifting, sometimes I'll kind of be a little bitch because I don't want to give too much to this workout because I plan on having a good roll the following morning. So for yourself, how have you been able to like kind of, I guess, auto-regulate how much energy you're giving to lifting versus jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, it would just depend on what phase I'm in. Right now, I'm real close to competition, so I'm not going to be putting all my energy into lifting heavy weights. You know, strength. It takes a long time to build strength, but then it stays with you also the longest, right? So it wouldn't really. I'm not going to get any stronger in 2 weeks, but I could definitely, you know, increase my cardio a little bit in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, it depends. Right after I compete, I'll get more into a lifting phase, and I'll start working on my strength again. And then as I get closer to competition, I'll slowly start cutting down on the weights and start incorporating more like sprint work, more like explosive work, and definitely focusing a lot more on the jiu-jitsu as well.
You do a lot of like box jumps and other movements like that. And do you work on your mobility a bunch and things like that too?
Yeah, I mean, most of my mobility training I do on my own. I just do like a lot of stretching. I have a lot of flexibility. But yeah, box jumps. I basically just show up and whatever Jason tells me to do, I do it. I'm usually like, can we go a little bit lighter? And then he's like, all right.
Yeah.
He'll make you work out forever too. He'll be like, oh yeah, 2 more. You know, he'll tell you like when the workout's supposed to be over, and then he'll be like, let's just do 2 more things.
Yeah.
And then those 2 things turn into 4 more things.
I will say one thing that I really love about Jason too is that he really truly understands the workload that I have already because he's immersed himself in it. He's came to our competition trainings. He knows how hard it is. And so he doesn't try to kill me in the workout sessions unless it's that time. So there's certain times where he really pushes me. There's certain times where he cuts the training a little bit shorter. He really does understand that my main goal is to be the best in the world at jiu-jitsu. I'm not trying to be the fittest person in the world, the strongest. I'm just doing that to be as good as I can at jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm. You know, what do you do to make your training harder? Because there probably came a point where you're not getting into bad positions nearly as much, or it's just hard for your training partners to do that, for some of your training partners to do that to you. So what do you do to continue to improve your skill?
Yeah, luckily I'm blessed to have some of the best training partners in the world.
That's
you know,
true.
like I said, Yuri, he's close to my same weight. He just won the absolute at ADCC, which is, arguably the toughest bracket in the world to win. So I have him. Luckily, I have a lot of other good black belts to train with.
Do you do anything special when you're rolling with somebody that you know, like they're never going to get to my back, or they're probably not going to get me a back? Do you do anything when you're rolling with people like that?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely times where I'll let someone pass and then work on regarding, or maybe I'll just be on my back and I'll just be I'll only use my legs. I'm going to try to not even use my hands for the next 5 minutes. So there are different things you can do to make sure that you're still getting high level training and you're still getting better with different partners.
Yeah. But sorry, I cut you off before you mentioned some of your other training partners.
Yeah. We have a lot of good black belts there at CTA. And so, I'm in bad positions all the time. And if I'm really peaking and my conditioning is really good, then Kyle he'll put 2 guys on me instead of 1, not at the same time. It'll be like a 10-minute round. We'll be like, okay, you go 2.5 minutes with him, and then 2.5 minutes with him, and then 2.5 minutes with him again. And then, so it'll be kind of like a Shark Tank type of situation. Yeah. And, we'll usually do that to whichever guy is preparing for something that's really important and they're starting to peak. Their conditioning is really good. He doesn't want you to just go with someone and just coast and just, play around. He wants you to really be working hard. So
I remember when the one of the competitions class I was at with you, Benji, you rolled a really hard round, and then I was your next warm-up round to get you ready for your other no-gi round. Yeah. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, so he'll be like, okay, you're going to go 5 minutes with him, and then you're going to go 2 minutes with him. He's going to start on your back. And then you're going to go 2 minutes with him, and it's going to be standing. You have to take him down or else you lose the round. Yeah. And then you're going to do the last 5 minutes with him. You have to get at least 2 submissions. Like, that's how he sets up the training. You know what I mean? He's like, or you have to go with him and you're down by 4 points. You got to score at least 5 points to win.
Yeah.
Shit, that'll make you puke.
No, yeah. It's been.
Have you got to points in training when you were newer to it where you thought you maybe weren't cut out for it? Like, could you drive home one day and just be like, fuck, man, I don't know if I should even bother going back. Like, this is getting to be pretty rough.
Many times. Yeah, many times.
It's not for me.
Yeah, it's been many times where I just had a bad day in training. It was real stressful too when I was training for MMA fights, because it's like, if you don't go out there and perform, like, you're gonna get the shit kicked out of you, and everyone you know is gonna be there. Like, your girl's there, your mom and dad are there, like, your friends are there. They're all gonna be like talking shit to you for the next 6 months if you get knocked out.
What happened? That's what people say, right? What happened?
Yeah. Oh, what happened, bro?
You're like, well, the other guy fucking trains really hard too.
Yeah, like, they're like, bro,
I wasn't trying to get knocked out.
Yeah, so that was real stressful. So then if you would like have a bad sparring day and then you're just in the car and you're like, man, what am I doing? Like, I'm going to get my ass beat. So it's a roller coaster of emotions, man,
Yeah.
How do you get through that? I ask this because I know this is going to happen a lot to me, especially, on my way as I progress. But this week I had one of those weeks where I'm like, fuck, dude, I'm going the wrong way. Like, nothing's working. I mean, it could be because like I've been kind of starting to feel sick and my ribs have been bothering me. So I've been moving a little bit slower.
But this week I was like, this is what everyone was talking about when you start regressing, or you feel like you're regressing. I'm not like beating myself up over it, but I experienced it this week. So I was just curious, like, how did you get through some of that?
I don't know. You just have to accept it. You have to just accept the feelings, and you have to try to let them motivate you. It would just be like if you lost at a tournament, it has to, you want it to like sting, because it's going to motivate you to go and train harder. So, if you get your ass kicked at practice, you have to it's okay to be mad about it. And then to be like, okay, like I need to work harder. I need to get better. So just let it motivate you.
Do you watch a lot of video? You watch a lot of other people grapple and stuff like that? And do you watch your opponents?
Yeah, definitely. That's something that Kyle really got me into. He's really big on studying and preparing for certain guys. So yeah, definitely I like to watch tape, see what guys do. I'll show some of my training partners, and I'll try to have them emulate it so then I can counter it. So yeah, I think that's really important.
And what platform do you guys recommend? Because like I know Flow Grappling is really popular. My buddy Chris has been telling me I need to subscribe to it already. But like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube and stuff. So where do you where do most of your inputs come from?
Yeah, so there's two main streaming services for jiu-jitsu and competitive grappling. Flow Grappling is probably the biggest one. They do the ADCC World Championships, the IBJJF World Championships, gi and no gi. So there's a lot of high level jiu-jitsu on there. And then the other one would be UFC Fight Pass. They have a lot of grappling shows as well. They have the EBIs, the combat jiu-jitsu.
Right.
Now they're doing the UFC Fight Pass Invitational, which is the tournament I'm competing on in 2 weeks.
Is that the first one they've ever done?
It's the third one. But the other two that they did, I believe, were like team events. I think this is the first one they're doing that's more of a jiu-jitsu style tournament. And from what I heard, they have just been seeing the numbers of the jiu-jitsu events that they're putting on, and the numbers are good.
Yeah.
And they really want to invest into grappling, especially after what we saw at the last ADCC. It was huge. It was the biggest grappling event of all time.
Yeah.
So now UFC Fight Pass sees that, and they want to get in it too.
Sick.
Do you remember your first time seeing the UFC, and like, was there a particular like fight, or was there something you saw where you're like, I need to figure out how to do that?
Yeah, I remember I was 15 years old, and it was the UFC Ultimate. Remember, it would be like an hour-long segment on like Spike TV, and it was all Anderson Silva. It was like Anderson Silva versus Chris Lieben, Anderson Silva versus Dan Henderson, and I can't remember. I think it was one more. And yeah, that was I think the first thing that I ever saw.
Anderson Silva was so incredible.
Incredible,
it was
yeah.
Nuts the way he would just like barely move out of the way of a punch, just enough so he could move out of the way, just enough so he could still counter it and like knock the guy out. It was crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And so, yeah, those old school MMA guys, GSP, I remember watching him early on, and guys like Shogun. Those were my first kind of experiences with MMA.
How did they choose the fighters for this next Fight Pass?
They contacted me. They texted me. I've been competing on UFC Fight Pass a lot because I used to do the Submission Underground shows that were on UFC Fight Pass. So I've always had a pretty good relationship with UFC Fight Pass. I was the UFC Fight Pass Male Athlete of the Year for 2 years in a row.
Oh shit!
So so they personally contacted me, and then I don't know how they chose the other ones. They're all really high level guys. Pat, my first opponent, Pat. He had a good performance on the last EBI, and he kind of like went viral with the way he cranked the guy's heel. So I think that's how they got him in, is from seeing him on the last EBI. And then the other guys like Nicky Rod, Andy Verrell, they all competed at ADCC. They're all like, other like really high level black belts. So yeah, it's a stacked bracket.
And what's the deal with Gordon on that right now?
Yeah, so Gordon is going to be in the main event competing against Vinny Magalesh, who he actually, Vinny, I believe, is the last person that beat Gordon. It was a while ago, but yeah, he's the last one that I think has a win over Gordon. So Gordon wanted to avenge that loss. So that's going to be on the main event. And then I'm pretty sure whoever wins the tournament would probably get the next match, right? It would make sense. So hopefully that would be next.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because I know these are all the other guys that you compete against, but when you see Gordon roll, what do you notice about him that's good or bad, or things that you're like, what do you notice?
He's definitely efficient. Like, he doesn't waste energy. He's really efficient. And he's really relaxed. That's one thing I noticed with a lot of the the higher level jiu-jitsu guys that I've had a chance to train with, they're so relaxed and just comfortable. I had a match a little while ago, a year or two ago, with Kainan Duarte. He's one of the other. He's probably like, you know, number 3 pound for pound in the world right now. And I remember when I was competing against him, he just was like, he was almost just like annoyed at me, just like showing no emotion, just like, so relaxed, like unbelievably relaxed. And that's what I see with Gordon too. He just always looks relaxed.
When you roll, do you feel like you're relaxed, or like, why is that something that
I feel stressed out when I'm rolling. I don't feel relaxed.
Have you ever felt, I mean, like, obviously maybe when you roll with people that are easy, like easier rolls, like you feel relaxed, but do you not feel relaxed when you like roll in competition?
No, when I'm competing now, I definitely feel relaxed.
Okay.
It just comes with experience.
Yeah.
I can remember walking out to the last ADCC and feeling really comfortable. Even though it was like a huge crowd, like 12,000 people, I remember feeling really comfortable, and you know, I remember passing and feeling kind of like at home. So yeah, I felt really comfortable. It just comes with experience and experience competing at a high level.
Yeah.
And I think experience competing in front of people.
Yeah.
So one big benefit that I did have is that I did fight MMA, where it's all eyes on you. And a lot of jiu-jitsu guys aren't used to that. Like, if you go from doing jiu-jitsu tournaments, there's no one really watching, and then you do a super fight where it's all eyes on you at once, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of experience with that already. And you know, I fought one time in Fresno, my hometown, for Bellator in front of like 5,000 people. So I've already have experience competing in front of big crowds.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I feel pretty confident.
Did that
comfortable out there.
Did that mess with your conditioning a little bit, like in the first few minutes, or just getting into just even like getting to the mat? Did you kind of feel like your legs get taken away from you a little bit? Because sometimes people's emotions are so high that it kind of gets them like kind of hyperventilate.
Yeah, if you're too nervous and you have too much adrenaline, like if you don't have the experience of being there on that stage in that moment, you're so tense. And so then you get the adrenaline dump, and then however long into the match, you just completely gas out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good to be loose and comfortable.
In this past ADCC, I mean, you won the East and West Coast trials, you said, yeah?
Okay, so this time I won the East Coast trials to qualify. The last ADCC in 2019, I won the East Coast or the West Coast trials to qualify for that one.
Okay. Now, with this last ADCC, when you look at your performance, because, you know, people are expecting like you to kill at ADCC. How do you feel about your performance there? What do you think happened?
It was just a really weird, unfortunate series of events that happened. Basically, the guy was playing guard, and my strategy was to, you know, play on top and try to pass. But if the pass wasn't there, not to really force it, because at the overtime, we would both have to stand up. So the ADCC, how it works is like at the 10-minute mark, if it's 0-0, both guys have to stand up. And then if one guy was to sit to bottom, he would get penalized. So the guy I was going against is really good on bottom. So my strategy was just kind of like to try to pass, but pretty much make him wrestle with me in the overtime. Yeah. And at one point, he kind of like kicked at me and kind of like tripped me. And I like jokingly like threw a kick back at him. Yeah. And they gave me a penalty point for it, which was kind of crazy, because guys there at ADCC were like smacking each other, headbutting each other, kicking each other, no penalties. I got a penalty, you know, it happened. It's water under the bridge. And that kind of like forced me to open up, right? I couldn't just wait until the overtime, because the penalty counts as a point. Yeah. So we wouldn't have.
So that made you rush your game.
So I rushed. I actually dove into a leg entanglement with him, and he's a leg lock specialist. I've never finished anyone with a leg lock, you know? Yeah. I'm not a leg lock specialist. It's not I'm not bad at leg locks, but it's not my A game, right? So I went into his A game. You know, I was forced into his A game because I couldn't play mine anymore. And he ended up countering me and tapping me. So
what makes you uniquely good as a no-gi grappler? Because, you know, a lot of guys are really focused on legs and being a leg lock specialist, but what is the thing that makes you different?
Yeah, definitely wrestling. I would say my wrestling game's better than most guys. And then also the guards that I play are really good for no-gi. So I play mainly close guard and half guard, which they both translate perfectly to no-gi. Yeah. So I think that's a big factor as well. Okay. And then also just the fact that I was focused on MMA for so long. Yeah. So I was always training a lot of no-gi, right? Most guys, they train either gi or no-gi. I was always doing kind of like 50-50 because I was preparing for MMA.
Yeah. And go ahead.
I was gonna say, what are some keys to like just not being fucked up from the sport? You mentioned lifting being pretty preventative. Is there some other stuff that you really put a lot of time or effort into? Even something like sleep. Like, are you really conscious of how much sleep you get and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely sleep. And I would say too, it depends on what that individual's goals are. If their goal is to be the best in the world, you're gonna break your body down. You're gonna have some injuries. You're gonna have to be in a state of being overtrained all the time. If your goal is just to learn the sport and you're passionate about it, take it slow. You don't have to train twice. You're not training for ADCC. You don't have to train twice a day every day. Get on a schedule that you can maintain forever. Because if not, I've seen so many times guys come in every single day. They train 6 days a week. They do double days on their day off from work. And then after they do that for 3 months, they take 6 weeks off. Because
I always tell people, you're not going to be that good anyway, so just take your time.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so you don't have to, if you're not training to be one of the best in the world, stop trying to act like you're training to be one of the best in the world. Take it slow. And you're going to get a lot better if you can train consistently for 10 years than if you train 3 times a day for 2 years, so just play the long game.
Yeah. How long has Yuri been your training partner? And what have you guys managed to like learn from each other? What have you managed to learn from him?
Yeah, it's been 4 years now.
Wow.
He was at Kyle's already when I got there. And, there's just, I learned a lot of like the hidden jiu-jitsu, like the things that you can't teach, the things that you only get from training with someone that's at a high level, right? Just knowing, there's something about knowing when you can't accept a position, right? So Yuri, for example, if you let him get to level 1, you're not getting back to level 0, right? So you can never accept level 1. You might as well fight with everything you have when he's trying to get to level 1, because if he gets to 1, he's only going to 2. He's not going back to 0.
Yeah, it's like he'll just continue to progress.
He's going to continue to progress. So that's something that I learned from training with him. I learned a lot of just like hidden things that you can't really teach, but you just kind of pick up on when you're training with someone at that level.
Could you give a basic example of something like that? Just kind of curious.
Yeah, just knowing when to fight.
Okay.
Like there's some times when he'll get to a position where he has your hips flattened out, for example, right? And, if you're already tired, you might just be like, okay, I'm going to sit here for a second and take a breath. But as you're taking the breath, he's also resting, and then he's progressing. So you have to know, like, I'm going to empty the tank at this moment, because if I accept this one small position, I'm done for the rest of the round.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one example that I can think of off the top of my head. Knowing when to empty the tank and knowing when to like fight and not accept the position.
Being a world champion, if you were to like write a book or something like that, what would be some things that you would say you recognize as characteristics of world champions, people that you observe, people you've been around, and including yourself?
The number one thing is discipline, for sure. Discipline, sacrifice, and consistency.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got anything else over there, Andrew?
No, just I'm looking at your IG, just trying to find Yuri, but he has his Instagram is blocked.
Yours
It's
is
private.
I actually
kind of bummed.
I was curious about Brazilian nationals because, because you were the first American to win that tournament.
Yeah, I was the third.
You were the third American to win that tournament.
To win that tournament at black belt.
At black belt. So what was that like?
Oh, that was amazing. Yeah, it was amazing. Kyle was scaring me. Like when we were going, he was like, you got to train hard. Everyone there is going to be throwing things at you, and they might try to fight you in the parking lot when we're walking there. And the refs are all gonna give points to the Brazilian guys, and you got to be ready for this. You got to be ready.
Yeah.
And then I win, and there's like people cheering for me. It was not that bad. It was cool. I love Brazil. I had been there one time before, and obviously like my coach is Brazilian. I have a lot of Brazilian friends. So man, I love it there. Yeah, the food's amazing. It's cheap.
Yeah.
The beaches are beautiful. It's great. I want to go back for sure. So
next year, are you going to be competing at Worlds also in the gi? Are you going to be doing more?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah?
I think I'm going to do Worlds in the gi. Yeah. I haven't competed yet at Worlds in the gi at black belt, and would be a shame if I went, all this time winning worlds at purple belt and brown belt and never at least competed at black belt.
Yeah.
So I definitely think I'm gonna jump in the gi next year and get active.
Do you cold plunge and do all that stuff for recovery as well?
Yeah.
Sauna and stuff.
Yeah, I was doing that a lot in the training camp for ADCC. I was just trying to do everything I could for recovery. So yeah, Jason has one at his house. So I would literally, he just pretty much gave me an open invite. So I would just be like go and sneak in his backyard and cold plunge and go home every morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you messed around with any mouth tape? We have some mouth tape over here for you for sleep.
Yeah. Someone gave me some of this. One of my students gave me some, and I put it on for one night and I got annoyed with it and took it off.
That happens.
Why'd you get annoyed?
The problem is I broke my nose when I was doing MMA, and I actually had surgery on it to open it up because I have a deviated septum, but I still don't have
Full capacity.
I don't
Your
have that
nostrils
much.
get kind of stuck.
Yeah, so I don't have full capacity of breathing out of my nose, so it's pretty difficult. Yeah, pretty difficult. If there's any surgeons out there that want to hook me up with the nose job, hit me up, slide in the DMs.
There's some people.
Got to be somebody.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you guys. Yeah, it was a blast. It freaking flew by.
Yeah.
Easy. Two easy people to talk to.
Take us on out of here, Andrew.
Sure thing. Thank you, everybody, for checking out today's episode. Please drop those comments down below. Let us know what you guys think about today's conversation. Hit that like button and subscribe if you guys are not subscribed already. For everything podcast related, head over to powerproject.live. That's where you'll find links and all kinds of extra good stuff on where to, we got the Devil Pussy mug and a couple other things on the site for sale. Follow the podcast at MB Power Project on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. My Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where you at?
Actually, Mason, I do have one other question because
Let's do
we've seen that on your social, you've been doing a lot of really good videos and teaching people a lot of good stuff, right? And you see a lot of other high-level competitors. And they probably want to leverage social media like you do, but they haven't been able to figure it out for themselves yet. So for people who do compete in jiu-jitsu and they want to share that type of content and engage people the way you have, what tips would you have for them?
There's a lot of small things that I've done and that I've learned, and even me and you have bounced some ideas off each other before. So I'm always learning, but there's one thing that I could share. This one concept that really changed the way that I thought about social media. It's especially as an athlete, your social media page is kind of like you just bragging about yourself and showing everyone how cool your life is, right? And unless you're a hot girl, that doesn't work. For us, that doesn't work. We can't just post our bodies and post that we're in Dubai. People don't care.
Dubai.
People don't think we're cool because we travel, or they don't think they're not going to follow us because of how we look, right?
Imagine if, when you got home from winning a big tournament, if you went around the neighborhood and started knocking on every door and say, hey, I just won this tournament. They'd be like, who the fuck are you? And why would I care?
Yeah.
No one cares.
Exactly. No one cares. That's the truth. So I switched my thinking of, instead of having my page be about how great I am and why I'm so cool, into how I can help you. So what are you going to benefit from following me?
Yes.
And you're good at that too. You do a lot of tips and different coaching, different advice on your page. So my page just became about if you follow me, if you follow this page, I'm gonna give you jiu-jitsu techniques, different techniques. Some of them might be flashy, some of them might be actual really good fundamental jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But this page is for me to show you guys jiu-jitsu techniques.
And you guys should follow him. He
follow
shows
me.
a lot.
Mason Fowler BJJ. Yeah, I was posting 7 days a week for a long time.
Yeah.
And now on average, I would say I probably post 6 times a week. I don't post every single day, but 5 to 6 times a week. And it's done really well for me. I went from 30,000 to 100,000 this year.
Yeah.
So that's some pretty good gains, I think.
Congrats, man. No, that is amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. And then on top of that too, I still do compete at a high level, just so that you know that I'm not completely full of shit. I'm still competing at high level jiu-jitsu tournaments against the best guys in the world on a monthly basis.
Even with your skill level, is it sometimes difficult to deal with training partners who maybe aren't as good, but they're just maybe a little crazy, they're a little off, they got real high energy, or is your skill set just kind of I guess negate that?
Yeah, it's okay now. not anyone that we have at our gym. I'm sure
Right.
there are guys out there that would piss me off if I was to train with them. But at our gym, you know, we train hard and we scrap with each other, but it's all, I'm not, you know, I don't have any
Everyone's
complaints.
trying to make each other better too, probably, right?
We're all making each other better.
Right.
Like if you try to beat me and you give me everything you have, it's only going to make me better.
Right. Awesome. Again, thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, where can people find you? 'Cause
Yep.
I don't think.
Oh yeah.
Instagram, Mason Fowler BJJ. That's where I'm most active on.
All right.
Cool. Here's Smelly's tip for the day. Just something that kind of hit me when I was running, something I was thinking about a couple of days ago. Courage is an emotion that you can't fake. Your body keeps score. Your body keeps track. You must have accomplished something. Your body knows the score of who you are, and what you have done. Strength is never weakness. Weakness is never strength. I'm at Mark Smelly Bell. Catch you guys later.